Newmarket, meeting on Saturday, January 30th, 2016, in Newmarket Town Hall. This first session of the town meeting will consist of a debate and discussion of the warrant articles that are presented on the on the warrant. Hopefully everybody has a copy. The way the process works for us as an SB2 community is that the articles that appear on the warrant will go on the ballot unless they are amended in some fashion by the folks, the registered voters here today. Hopefully everybody picked up a copy of the rules on the way in. I won't go over all of them in detail. Basically, I'm going to announce the number and subject matter of the proposed articles. I'm going to read the text of some of them, but not necessarily all of them. For the ones that I don't read, I will summarize the pertinent points, the subject matter, and the amounts at issue, because in many instances there's simply a lot of boilerplate, and what's important is the substance of what's trying to be accomplished. Anyone who wants to speak to a warrant article is invited to come up to the microphone. Please announce your name and address. And beyond that, we are prepared for the first item on the agenda, which is always the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And a brief public service announcement before we begin. I want to remind everybody that the primary voting will take place at the fire department this year. So February 9th from 7 to 7, the polls will be open at the fire department this year due to an unfortunate incident at the high school. Going to proceed to consideration of warrant article number 2, which is the operating budget warrant article, not including the appropriations by special warrant articles that appear on the warrant. The proposed budget is $16,847,926. The default budget is $16,895,184. So by my math, the proposed budget is $47,258 less than the default budget. And before we open the floor, I'm going to ask Mr. Lunny to give a brief presentation on the operating budget.
If I may, I'd like to ask that our business administrator, who is a non-resident, speak to this article.
Is that agreeable to the meeting? Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Bluen.
Thank you. Thank you and good morning. I'd just like to briefly review the Article 2, our default budget, and just highlight.
Please. The microphone's not working very good.
Sorry, can everybody hear me now?
No.
Christine, you want to come up here?
Sure.
Is this on? Can you guys hear this?
Yes. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay now? Okay. Good morning. My name is Christine Bluen. I'm the business administrator of the school district, and I'm going to speak to Article 2, the default budget. I'm going to briefly highlight some of the highlights of it. So as the moderator, Mr. Hawkins stated, the total operating budget that the school district is proposing is $16,847,926. There is the default budget, which he mentioned. Some of the items, the reason for the overall change, and this change represents about a 0.5% decrease over the prior year's approved budget. And some of the decreases you'll find on the front page on the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll just review those. One of the main articles there is that the teacher's contract remains status quo until a new successor agreement is voted and approved. And you will see that in Article 3 coming up. We'll speak to that in just a few minutes. So that's one of the main reasons due to the level funded budget. The second is due to special education. We've had some changes in out-of-district placements, some aging out, some in-services in charter school. Our fuel oil, we were able to negotiate contracts for the current year, which were substantially lower than what we projected. So we're also projecting a decrease in fuel oil and electricity. And then the second one is due to, we have some teachers who are going to be retiring, but the severance payments are not quite as high as what we've had in the past. So those are some of the major decreases. Some of the offsetting increases this year, we have a placement of about $50,000 in the operating budget for a facilities manager. Now, we have not ironed out all the details. We will do that throughout the process if the budget shall get approved. We will be talking with the town to see if we can do a joint effort, if we could do contracted services, whether the position may look to be full-time or part-time. So some of those things we will be discussing in our public meetings. Same thing as a job description. So that is one of the proposed changes for staffing that we have. The second one is at the senior high school. At the junior high level, we have made a request to increase a part-time math teacher to a full-time. And that is really for the need because we have significant increases in participation of band, chorus, and music. So that's a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of. Other than that, I'd be welcome to answer any other specific questions that you may have. Thank you.
So the proposed budget is a 2-cent increase over the previous year's tax rate, and the default budget would be an 8-cent increase. Is there any comment or discussion on warrant article number 2? Yes, sir, Mr. Simon.
Russ Simon, 510 Cushing Road. I just had a question with do we know what the impact is on the gymnasium and what that may do to any capital reserve funds or the operating budget?
Ms. Bluen.
Great question. There will be no impact. The only impact that would be a $1,000 deductible that we have because it's going to be an insurance claim.
Any further comment or discussion on warrant article number 2? Thank you, Mr. Simon. Seeing no further discussion, article 2 will be placed on the ballot as presented. Article number 3. And I'm going to read this because this is the teacher contract warrant article. It doesn't appear very frequently, so I'm going to take the liberty of reading this. Shall the school district vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Newmarket School Board and the Newmarket Teachers Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over those paid in the prior fiscal year. For the year 2016-2017, the estimated increase is $249,259. For the year 2017-2018, the increase is $292,154. For the year 2018-2019, the estimated increase is $296,175. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $249,259 for the upcoming fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those of the appropriation at current staffing levels. This is recommended unanimously by both the school board and the budget committee. The estimated tax impact is 35 cents per thousand. And we'll have a brief discussion from Ms. McKinney on Article, or Mr. Lunny.
I will, if I may. I don't mind. Does this work? Are you catching? Yep, this one's working fine. Thank you. The collective bargaining agreement that is proposed is a three-year agreement. And we thought that had some great value, allowing for 2 years of experience for a new superintendent incoming before negotiations begin. Remember that in order to negotiate, you actually spend the last year of whatever agreement you have in the process of negotiation. So for a new superintendent who has lots of priorities in the first months, this gives an ample amount of time to contemplate the impact of that agreement and any changes that might be desired as we move towards negotiations. The negotiations between a very strong and productive team of teachers and administrators and school board members was predicated on two real, I think, principal items, one for each side, if you want to say that, but really for all of us. One, we had the risks represented by the possibility of a Cadillac tax under the Affordable Care Act being a new expense to be borne by someone. And two, our teachers right now have a starting salary that ranks them 124th out of 159 in the state of New Hampshire. And in the Seacoast, they struggle to be competitive. We have a great corps of teachers who, despite the differences in salaries that they might find in other districts in the region, don't leave us. But some of our teachers come, gain some experience, and then move on for a $8,000 or $10,000 bump when they move. And the teachers have been concerned about that, as have we. And so those were the two primary objectives as we launched into negotiations. To that end, I can tell you that the language of the contract that's before us creates a 6-person study committee representing equally the association and the district that will, on an ongoing basis, contemplate alternatives to high-cost plans, seeking out new vendors and new plans. It should be said that the legislature kicked the can down the road on the excise tax that we call Cadillac tax, so that it won't have impact now until January 1st of 2020. But the risk and the concern was still very real, and so this committee would contemplate those changes that could be proposed not only for the teachers, but as go the teachers, so go all of the district employees for coverage, at least traditionally. In addition to that, there is language that says, should there be a condition when the plans that we have are high-cost plans, the teacher association will move to a low-cost plan, and any teacher who elects to continue with a high-cost plan will pay the difference that represents whatever the excise tax would be, ensuring that the taxpayers would never be asked to foot the bill for an excise tax, nor send dollars from Newmarket property taxpayers out to contribute to that program, wherever that is, DC if you want to call it that. Offsetting that, though, are salary and wage increases that provide for a step increase for those within the wage scale, and then the scale movement of 2%. In second and third years, it calls for a step for those available to them, and 2.8%, which drive the costs that you see printed in the warrant of $249,000 in the first year, $292,000 and $296,000 in the second and third years, respectively. The rest of it was less significant language, much of which had already been previously agreed to, concerning when paychecks are cut and the names and titles of those that are represented in the class, among others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lunny. Floor is open for debate and discussion on warrant article number 3. Seeing none, Article 3 will proceed to the ballot as presented. Warrant article number 4 reads, shall the school district, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. This is recommended unanimously by both the school board and the budget committee. And Mr. Lunny, again.
Very, very briefly, in a show of good faith, in the absence, if Article 3, the teacher agreement just discussed, should fail to pass, Article 4 provides the district the option to go back to the bargaining table, continue negotiations with the Teachers Association, and when we have a new agreement to propose, to call a special meeting to have that acted upon. The intent being that we'd be able to renegotiate and come back to the taxpayers in advance of a new contract season, a new school year, and having to pay those teachers. So you don't have to do this. This is optional under statute, but it was something that the board felt showed good faith and support for the teacher agreement, and a desire to make sure we address all of those same items. If this doesn't pass, we'd like another crack at it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lunny. Comments, debate, discussion on warrant article number 4. Seeing none, warrant article number 4 will proceed to the ballot as presented. Article 5. Shall the school district vote to authorize the school board to convey a portion of the district's land behind the elementary school and to accept in exchange a conveyance of land to the school district of land in the same general area, all on such terms and conditions as the school board determine are in the best interest of the district, and further to authorize the school board to take any further action necessary to carry out this vote. Recommended unanimously by the school board and the budget committee, and estimated to have 0 impact on the tax rate. And warrant article 5 is
Mr. Kennison.
Sorry?
Mr.
Mr. Kennison. Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Go ahead.
I'm going to stand up because we have some drawings to look at. So first of all, before I get going, I want to thank Skip Manso, who's on the School Board's Facilities Committee, for reaching out to the Durrell Woods Association to make this happen. This is a great opportunity for the district and at no cost. The idea here with Article 5, if you have, I don't know if you have a drawing. Yep, good. I'm gonna point to this. The piece over here to the left is swampland that the school currently owns. It's basically of no use to the school. It's a little over 2 acres. The total acreage of the school site is 11.1 acres. So the school effectively has a little under 9 acres to work with. What this land swap would do would take that swampland in exchange for the rectangular piece right behind the school, which is about 4 acres. And several of us went out and walked that property. It's mostly ledge. It's probably not economical to develop the whole thing, but if you needed to move an access road back a little bit, that's what this land swap would allow us to do. All of that land that we would get as a school district is assessed at 0. So there'd be no tax impact. Nothing comes off the tax rolls for this exchange. And you know, we don't know what we're going to do with it, but it's better to have it and not need it than to, you know, someday find out that we need to move something and, you know, we don't have the ability to, you know, to move. If you look at the school's position, it's relatively landlocked, and this will also pertain to the next article that we'll discuss. But it's a no tax impact. It's sort of a no-brainer. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Comments, discussion, debate on warrant article number 5. Yes, ma'am.
Lynn Badger, Cushing Road. I just am curious, forgive me for being a little cynical, but why are they swapping this?
That's a fair question, Lynn. The association needs so much open space as part of its plan.
Okay,
Yeah, so
All right.
that's the idea there.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion, debate on warrant article number 5? Seeing none, warrant article 5 will proceed to the ballot as presented. Warrant article number 6. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $169,610 for the purchase of property at a price not to exceed that amount at 239 South Main Street, consisting of a 2.17 acre parcel of land with a 400 plus or minus foot common boundary abutting the elementary school to be used for the expansion of school facilities, and authorize the withdrawal of $71,400 from the expansion of school facilities capital reserve fund created for this purpose in March 1962, with a balance of $98,210 to come from general taxation. Recommended unanimously by the school board and recommended by the budget committee on a vote of 9 in favor, 0 against, and 2 abstentions. The estimated tax impact of this warrant article is 14 cents. And Mr. Kennison.
Yeah, so this piece of land, which is to the right, it's marked on the drawing, is developable. It's mostly upland. The big thing here is it's got access to Route 152. And as many of you know, we're in the process of working with an architect right now on the facilities committee to come up with design solutions for all the district's facilities. We don't know precisely at this point what we would do with that land, but the architect has come up with a conceptual drawing. Jason, if you could go to that next drawing. Get out your microscope. So, one of the problems at the school now is that the bus drop-off and the parent drop-off is in front. And if anybody has been there in the morning, it's extremely congested and dangerous. There's not enough parking space now at the school either. On regular days, all of the spaces are full and people are parking along the sides of the roads. It gets worse when there's snow. If there's ever an event at the school, people are parking all the way up Durrell. What the McGrath property potentially, as the Banwell firm's drawing shows here, would allow a bus drop-off in the back, a separate bus drop-off, and a parent drop-off up front. It would also allow the playground to be moved in. Right now, the access road is in between the playground and the school, so you have vehicles going, between the school and the playground, which isn't ideal either. The playground is also very narrow and sort of maxed out. You can see also on this is very much, I want to emphasize, a conceptual drawing. We don't know ultimately what we're going to do with this piece if the town approves it. But this drawing shows it would have a big impact even on this use. You can see some extra parking spaces in there. I wish we were 4 months down the road on our analysis, and I could tell you exactly what we would use this piece for, but nobody can predict the timing of when properties go for sale. And so the issue with us is if we forego this opportunity, somebody else might scoop up that property, and it's really the only other developable property adjacent to the school that's of much use. It runs the whole length essentially of the right side boundary. So and to give a little history, this property was last for sale in 1923. I suspect it would have some appeal for developers. And so the school board, in the school board's judgment, we wanted to scoop it up, or at least try to, because it really opens up our options. Just to give a little bit more background, the property was last assessed at $162,700, and the taxes on it for 2015 were a little over $4,000. That would come off the tax rolls if the school owns it. So I want to be clear on that. The tax impact, Chris already explained that part of the money for this would come out of an existing trust fund, a little over $71,000. The other part would be raised by taxes, a little over $98,000, with an impact of 14 cents per thousand. And if my math is right, on a $250,000 home, for example, that would be one-time $35 impact. So both our architect, Ingrid Nichols, and Dr. Joyce, if anybody has read Dr. Joyce's report, Dr. Joyce came in over the summer and during the fall to do an independent analysis of both schools' facilities needs. We wanted, sort of an outsider, somebody who didn't have a dog in the fight, to give us a sanity check. Among other things, Dr. Joyce told us with regard to the the elementary site, it's landlocked. I mean, you don't have anywhere to go, and you've got ledge out back that's not really developable. If another property should become available, it would probably be wise to purchase it. And lo and behold, here we are. So he very much supports it as sort of an independent set of eyes. And when I mentioned to our architect that, what if we had that property, her eyes lit up, because she was concerned with the parking situation and what we would do if we, where are we going to put spaces, and if we're going to, do any other thing at the school. So this is sort of a, we can't control the timing type of thing, but it's prudent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Debate, discussion, questions on Article number 6. Yes, sir.
Michael Cahill, Ash Swamp Road. I don't dispute the idea of purchasing the land. I see the use of it, but I think there are some structures on that which might involve hopefully an exercise for our fire and police departments to clear that. And would that be done in an expeditious way?
That's interesting. Interesting you say that, Mike. We've talked to the fire chief. He thinks it's a little too close to the adjacent buildings. That would be a nail-biting experience. But we also have an estimate, thank you for bringing it up, of $23,000 for the demolition of all of those buildings as a high end from the town, so essentially from one pocket into the other, so people understand that. And again, that's a high end for demolition. And we also understand anecdotally that the barn that's on there may be of some value to somebody to come and take as a timber frame structure and as sort of a no-cost type of thing. But that may give people an idea of the incidental cost to this deal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill.
Trish Simon, Cushing Road. I don't know if it's allowed, but could the Budget Committee discuss what went into why some people would abstain from voting for this?
Somebody,
When we were discussing the warrant article, there was one comment made. I was one that abstained, and it was about a facility committee meeting that I was unaware of, did not know. There was one sentence spoke that there had been very early on talks of possibly even closing down the elementary school in pre-planning. It's highly unlikely that's ever going to happen. Hindsight being 2020, I found out that if you're present, you're not allowed to abstain. I should have either voted yay or nay. Thinking now, I would still vote for it and leave it in the hands of the voters. I did not know at the time that discussion had gone on, but it's highly unlikely that they're going to get rid of the elementary school where we would put those kids anyways. So it was more of an at-haste decision of doing an abstention instead of just saying yay or nay. That's all.
thank you. Anyone else for a comment, discussion of Article number 6? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Carr from Riverbend Road. A couple questions. First, does the town have first dibs on this before it goes to the public for sale? Or is it going to go into open bidding for developers? And second, if it does go to open bid and the town doesn't end up buying this and it gets approved at the vote, what's going to happen to the $98,000? Is it going to go into the capital reserve, or is it going to be going back to the taxpayers?
My understanding is that there's a PNS, but Mr. Kennison?
Yeah, I can answer the first one. There is a PNS. We have a PNS on the property.
That's a purchase and sales agreement to buy the property, subject to the, conditioned upon the outcome of this vote.
And also subject to our due diligence, environmental review, all of that, so we know what we're buying. We have 90 days from the purchase and sale signing, which was a couple of weeks ago, I think.
I can take a take a little bit of a swing at the second part of that question, which is what happens if the voters approve this article, but we, for whatever reason, don't execute on the purchase and sales because of the environmental review or what have you. I think I can answer it this way. Anything that's approved on the ballot ends up being raised as an appropriation, but it would not go into the trust fund. It would not be spent on anything else. It's specific to this purpose, so it would simply be raised in the next tax cycle and then returned as an unspent dollar amount, that $98,000. And the money would not come out of the trust fund because we would never actually realize the expenditure. So,
Legally, when you raise money for a specific purpose, you can only expend it for that purpose. So if the purpose isn't realized, the money lapses back.
Right.
It's not spent on anything else. Sorry, thank you.
Ingrid Olberg, 44 Braelia. Just have a question, and it may be part of your environmental review. That building is of an era where there might be asbestos. Would the cost of an asbestos disposal significantly increase the cost of demolition?
I assume that's part of the due diligence, but Mr. Kennison.
Yeah, it's a fair question. That's part of the due diligence as well. We've had that experience with the Carpenter property recently where there was some asbestos there, and we had to address that. The only thing I can tell you is you don't know until you investigate. I will note that it's a stone foundation, and oftentimes you can have problems with concrete foundations environmentally, so it doesn't appear we'd have that problem with this property, but you never know. And that's why we secured 90 days to look at it, because if it's not economical to to demolish that property, and there's some environmental hazard there that's way, too much money, then we want to know that.
Okay, thanks.
I'll let you do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Todd Brissell, Wadley Falls Road, and probably way down in the weeds, but on that picture and in our handout, there's a little yellow piece of land that seems to be in the middle of the playground. I just wondered what that is and what's going to happen with it.
That is an old burial ground that has historically been part of that property that's still there.
Okay.
You can go see it. There's a low stone wall, or the remnants of an old stone wall around it. So that's not going to be touched.
So, sorry.
That's,
So the
I
issue,
think
that
that's
has
right.
no impact on this, like, that's not somebody else's piece of land or somebody that could impact this?
It's the school district's piece of land, but they can't touch it, do anything with it, because it's an old burial ground.
All right, thank you.
It's my understanding from my
Your time.
distant experience in the school board. Any further comment on Article 6? Seeing none, Article 6 will proceed to the ballot as presented. Article number 7. Shall the school district vote to discontinue the construction of a new school building and renovation of existing school buildings for fire and life safety code compliance, dual purpose, capital reserve fund, created in 2012? Said funds, with accumulated interest to date of withdrawal and the approximate amount of $3,236.53, are to be transferred to the school district's general fund surplus. Recommended unanimously by both the school board and the budget committee, and this is a zero tax impact on the warrant. And Mr. Zink.
Thank you. This article, Article 7 and Article 8 are very closely related, so what I'd like to do is address Article 7 first, then have the moderator read Article 8.
We're going to take them up one at a time. I understand that they're related, but well.
Okay. Article 7 Article 7 talks about a capital reserve fund or a dual purpose fund that was approved by the voters of Newmarket back in 2012. And the purpose of that fund was to address fire and life safety issues, renovation issues, new school building issues, to solve the fire and life safety issues and bring to the public conclusions on renovation or building of a new school. Those funds have been expended now, and there's $3,000 remaining in that dual purpose fund.
Is that it for?
Yeah.
Okay, any,
The rest of it, hopefully will make sense when we get into the next one.
if you want to discuss how it's related to Article 8, we're just going to act on them one at a time.
Gotcha. Oh, perfect. Okay, I'm easily confused. The school district is going to ask you for monies to further consider renovations or new buildings for both the high school and the elementary school. It's something that the town asked us to do both at the same time. One of the options was to come to you and take out of the surplus the $150,000 that we're requesting to further this study. The concern we had as a school board is voters would look at the addition of $150,000 and be confused by the fact that the fund is called building and renovation of existing school buildings for fire and life safety code compliance. Fire and life safety issues are resolved. And our concern was people would say, wait a minute, you've already done that. Why are you asking for more? So we have retitled this fund, which is the next article, to talk specifically what it was about. So this article is to get it out of the way, to put it in the past where it belongs and move forward on funding a venture that we think is important.
Thank you, Mr. Zink. Any comments, questions, discussion of Article 7? Mr. Simon?
I'm happy to see we used all the money, but could we spend a minute and just remind us of how much we raised? Because it was part of the tax rate for 3 years and what we spent it on. I think there was probably, about $2.5, $3 million, $4 million that was spent on stuff to get fire and life safety taken care of.
Ms. Bluen, please.
Should I dance for a minute while you try to pull up a record or a file somewhere?
It's going to take me a minute.
Go ahead and pull that up. If Christine's got a document, then she can actually speak to some of it more specifically. But we have, that was created by the 2012 annual district meeting. And I think Al spoke to it eloquently when he suggested that we just had concerns about the language that must be used legally to describe that fund, and how some elements of that description or that title aren't consistent with the intent moving forward. But monies have gone into, for at least 2 or 3 of those years, that dual purpose fund. And over a 3-phase cycle, we made changes to fire exits and egress, stairwells. We did some room renovation, worked with ramps. The most recent project was to put in the elevator in the back part of the building near the gymnasium to provide for accessibility to multiple levels in that building. Have I adequately danced?
You did.
Good.
Thank you.
Could you help us? Thank you, please.
So the total cost that we've spent to date is roughly $2.4 million. And some of the, and I'm just going to briefly, I think to answer Mr. Simon's question, is just go over some of the things that we've done. So it started back in the spring of 2011, where we did some upgrading of hardware. We also did some architectural engineering, construction of new code compliant maintenance, storage buildings, door lock repairs, and fire rated doors. The winter of 2012, we did ceiling replacements in the 1924 section of the building. We also did some door sweeps, some storage areas, which we had to close down because they were in stairwells. Then in 2013, which was the largest year, which we had the emergency egresses to address, the science labs on the second floor. And then in 2014, we had the second version of, I should say, phase 2 of the egress from the second floor, classrooms and ceilings continued. And then most recently, this past summer, we had the elevator, some ramp modifications, stairwell enclosures.
Thank you. I sort of knew the answers to that question, but I thought it would be useful to share with the public what we've done. And also would like to get the comment that, at least as far as the old fire and life safety issues that were hanging over the high school and the elementary school, those have been satisfactorily completed at the moment. So we don't have a carry-forward issue as we begin discussions on other facilities changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Mr. Cahill.
Michael Cahill, still on Ashwamp Road. This brings up an interesting topic. You know, we fixed the fire and life safety issues because we're under threat of a closure from the fire marshal, and you know, it's important that we did that. However, that put us at risk of losing our points for the yet elusive school building aid. And I wanted you to know that HB 231 will address that issue, that we will not lose points. That's moving through the legislature now, and will come to a vote in the coming weeks. And I know we spent nearly $3 million, and I think we should, that was an emergency in my view, and the Department of Education is supposed to fund emergencies, and I'm not done asking for that 30% of that $3 million.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Yes, Ms. Ryan.
Judith Ryan, 125 Main Street. Is my understanding from the wording on this that this article will be funded with any surplus balance up to $150,000 that remains from the 215-216 operating budget? It's my recollection, I believe, that any surplus from that operating budget should be returned to the town general fund. Is that correct?
You're referring to Article 8?
Article 8.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Anyway, we'll defer that
We'll
question.
hold that comment for Article 8.
Okay.
Any further comment on Article 7?
Yeah, it's my fault.
No further comment on Article 7. Article 7 will proceed to the ballot as presented. Article 8, as Mr. Zink has explained, this is the flip side of Article 7, as it were, which is, shall the school district vote to establish a capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 to be known as the School Construction and Renovation Capital Reserve Fund for the purpose of funding new construction and the renovation of school buildings, including necessary costs of architectural and engineering plans, and the construction costs for additions and renovations or new facilities for the school district, and to raise and appropriate up to $150,000 to be placed in this fund, with that sum to come from any June 30th, 2016 fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, 2016, and further to name the school board as agents to expend from this fund. Recommended unanimously by the school board and the budget committee, and estimated 0% tax impact, zero tax impact. So, Mr. Zink, again.
I'd like to give you a little bit of history for those that may not have been following the school board's actions over the past few months. We had originally, some of us had thought that perhaps we would be presenting a warrant article to you this year for whatever the resolution of the school building issue was, whether it's renovation or new school. I think it was an aggressive concept, never mind perhaps an impractical one. We then backed up and said we need to go before the town and ask them to allow the school board to expend funds to develop whichever alternative the town selects in terms of renovation or new building. Those costs generally are 8 or 9% of total building costs. So I don't want to pull a number out, but it's a lot of money. And quite frankly, we didn't feel as though we had done enough work to present that to the community and have you accept it on our word that we wouldn't spend the money on an alternative that you didn't approve. So we backed up to this point, which says, and by the way, not being able to do the engineering, architectural, and complete work this year means it's going to be a year delay in doing whatever we do. So what the school board is asking your support to do is to spend $150,000 this year to get enough information, enough conceptual work done so that we can present to the community alternatives and estimated costs. So it's our intent to come to the community and talk about this is what it would cost to renovate, this is what it would cost to put new windows in the elementary school and so forth. And then based on what you folks approve in terms of moving forward, we're then going to come back to you and ask you for 7 or 8% of whatever you approve to move ahead. It will mean 2018 is when we're actually going to be 17, when we're actually going to be, 18 that we'll actually be doing building. So that's the title. And we changed, as I mentioned earlier, we changed Article 8 to really talk about what it was in its school construction for the purpose of funding new construction and the renovation of school buildings, including necessary costs for architectural and engineering plans. It's not going to be a document that's this high that talks about every little detail on the architectural plan or structures that are fully engineered, but we're hoping that it will be $150,000 will be enough to come to you and give you the concept and some costs. So that's the history on Article 8.
Thank you, Mr. Zink. Ms. Ryan, did you want to?
I just want to make this clear. It says up to $150,000, correct?
Right. Correct.
You're not asking for $150,000.
Right.
You're saying up to.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
And you have to do that because if the fund balance were only 100.
Right. I understand that.
Definitely.
I just
Yep.
want to make sure, because you said you were asking for $150,000, and I just make sure that we understand it's up to that of any surplus. Now, if we did not pass this, the surplus would, in my recollection, go back to the general fund for the town. Is that correct?
Correct.
I just want to make that clear.
Well,
The 2.5%.
yeah,
Yes.
You don't, is there a nuance we're
what is,
any operating surplus at the end of the fiscal year, as it stands right now,
Right.
in the absence of any other action taken,
Right.
is returned as a credit against next year's bill.
yes.
We actually don't cut a check and send it, but yes,
Right.
it's returned to the taxpayers through the next cycle.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Mr. Simon, please step up.
Just as clarification, sorry. I thought last year we voted to allow the school to create its own general fund based on a calculation and keep some of the surplus if there was one at the end of the year. Just like the town does. In the past, if there was a surplus in the operating budget, the school had to return it as a credit on the tax rate. Last year, we voted to allow the school a small percentage to hold back in a general sort of emergency fund. I'm assuming that if the surplus is not used to fund this, it's not automatically returned as a credit to the school budget. It would secondarily go through the, do I want to keep any of that money in my general reserve fund?
It's the nuance of, I think, of the description. It would automatically go back in the absence of the board taking an affirmative action otherwise to execute the tool that you just described and choose to keep, which we didn't do in this last cycle.
Okay.
And we would do very publicly if we were going to do it moving forward.
So
yes.
you'd have the opportunity from that surplus to hold it back for another reason? if the
Some
board
portion of it,
chose
which
to.
is
Okay.
defined by that statute. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
David Spiegel, Maple Street. Although everybody in this room, or probably everybody in this room and watching at home probably is aware, the school board has been in the process of evaluating the facilities issues, and I would like to compliment the fact that they are doing it in a very responsible way, which I think is important considering the fact that in the past there have been questions about how the monies might in the future be spent and on what. And at this juncture, my question is, what would the implication be to your process to going forward if this article were not approved? Because I think it would be important for the people in the community to know how critical this would be to a successful resolution of the facilities questions.
Mike?
Mr. Zink, you want to,
I think Mike probably.
Michael?
It is critical. Let me step back a little bit. We went through a long process in August and September and October in picking an architect. And before we even did that, when Al and I got on the board, one of the things we wanted to do was, in light of the passionate feelings on the last vote, was to sit down with people and understand what their thought processes were. One of the things that came to my mind was we spent a lot of money in the past on architects, a lot of money. Why wouldn't we just use the same architect all over again? And we've had the same architect for the golf course proposal back in 2006 and for the last one. And surprisingly, to me anyways, the feedback we got was that, that's water under the bridge. You're kind of hard pressed to say that you're taking a fresh look at things, whether it be, an ad reno or a new school, if you're using the same architect who worked on these other plans. And so the sentiment was, at least the feedback we got was, let's take another look at this, and let's not be burdened with some of the with any speculation from using a prior architect. And I would say that that's not to say that the prior architect did a poor job. An architect will do whatever you want him to do, him or her. Okay, they'll design whatever you want them to design. It's really up to us as a community to lead that process with the architect's help. So we the beginnings of the facility committee went through an extensive process of vetting architects. I think we visited 12 schools on nights and weekends in that process of each of the finalists. They came down to 3, I believe. And we traveled all the way up to Hanover. We traveled to Keene. We traveled to Rochester. We traveled to the Lakes region to look at all sorts of schools and talk to people who had actually worked with these architects. And it wound up that we chose the Banwell firm, and we're extremely happy with them so far. And when they gave us their bid, their amount, I was kind of shocked. I mean, it was very low. I think it was $20,000 for their pre-bond fees if we were going to go to bond next month. This was, back in August, and I'm like, they're going to be losing their shirt off of this. I think it was like a little under $5,000 for expenses, and they said, look, this is what we do. I mean, we design schools in New Hampshire, and we realize the economic environment that towns just can't raise money. They can't raise money for fees, so they've got skin in the game. They're taking a risk because if they're doing, I would say, tens and tens of thousands of dollars worth of work on this, and if it doesn't pass, well, they don't get their fee. Architects really make their fee when they do the actual design. The reason I say all that is that we're asking for up to $150,000. Normally, an architect's fee alone for this phase would be over that amount. So I guess I'm thankful to the Banwell firm for being pragmatic and realizing that. So they're helping us out, and they've been of great help. I don't want to go on and on about everything we're doing, but one of the things right now that the Banwell firm has helped us out on is the educational specifications for both schools, both in presentation and in substance. We're in the midst of working on those right now. And they've seen so many iterations of these things and realized that they are the most important thing in the whole process. And they spend hours and hours of time working with us on those. They're the foundations. They basically say, this is your program, these are your space needs. And so we've been working with them diligently on this. This is really work that they didn't originally sign up to do, but they've taken a leadership role in this. And I think we'll have a reasonable result, a supportable result from that. So all this is just to sort of put this number in perspective. And to the question, it's up to $50,000. The $150,000. The school board, being stewards of that money, will make sure it's spent wisely. It doesn't mean we'll spend the whole $150,000, but we estimate that's what we'll need, not only for the architect, but for any civil engineering review that needs to be done, any structural engineering, and most importantly, to hire a reputable cost estimator. So when we go to a bond vote in 2017, we're pretty confident in how much a proposal is going to cost. And I just want to reiterate what Al touched upon. This is a paradigm shift in terms of the approach here. The last 2 times around, essentially the notion is that the school board and their architect team came up with a design and presented it to the public. We're going to have the public's input on this before we land on any design, and that's critical. And again, I don't know how much people have been paying attention. We'll do a better job getting the word out, but our facilities committee, which I'm chair of, is made up of a diverse group of people from all sides of these issues, at least in the past. So we've got Russ is on it with us. He's here. A few others, I think, are here in the crowd. So we've got good eyes on all this, and we're in good hands with a Banwell firm. And to get back to the original question, it's extremely important that we get these funds so we can do what we need to over the next year, so we're comfortable with a proposal in March.
Thank you, Mr. Kennison. Yes, sir.
Mike Watson, I live on Cushing Road. I know that the school board has decided not to pursue tuitioning students, but in fact the school board doesn't have the town's permission to build a new school. This doesn't say high school, elementary school. It just says new school building. So you're asking for money to proceed with designs for buildings that you don't have permission to build, is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by this is for a new school building. We haven't made any decision.
Well, I don't know, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
it just says capital reserve fund for the purpose of funding new construction and the renovation of school buildings. So I don't know what that means.
Right, the community doesn't know yet. We don't know yet what we're going to do, but all of those things are still on the table. So no, there's been no vote of the public, no permission given to
build new
renovate
schools.
or build.
Exactly.
Or renovate.
Right.
Or make an addition, or any of those things,
So
correct.
this is kind of betting on the come then, this money. You feel you have to design something, or you couldn't put it up for, I don't understand the,
Well, it'd be tough to ask the public to approve something they don't know. I mean, we have to make a presentation to the public of what we would propose.
right, but you're assuming the public will give you permission to build a school building, and you want to spend up to $150,000 on that, on that thought.
No, we're not saying that at all. What we're saying is that we need to do the due diligence and get the public input to come up with a proposal to put before the voters next March. So this is just to do the due diligence, get all the information we need to make a decision as a school board for a proposal, which would be on a bond vote for next March.
Right.
We're not asking the public right here to give us permission to build anything.
I understand that, but you're going to spend $150,000 to come up with a proposal, and then if they say no, where did the $150,000 go? Wouldn't it be better to get permission first
Permission for what?
to build a new school?
But that's not what we want.
Does
Well, hold on a
your
second.
document say, like ours does, renovations or additions and renovations or new facilities?
I'm reading off the yellow thing. I'm not sure it says the same thing.
Maybe we've got a typo. Does everyone
I
else?
probably just don't understand
Does it
it.
only say build, does it only say build a new school? Does somebody have just a document that says build a new
Article
school?
8?
No.
New construction renovation.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, because I want to make sure that the public all has the same document that says, school construction and renovation capital reserve for the purpose of funding new construction and the renovation of new, school buildings, including costs, blah, 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 for additions and renovations or new facilities. Okay, just to be sure we all have the same.
Yeah,
Good.
I was asking what the purpose of the money was for. It's not completely clear to me from that. That was my question.
Yeah, can you go back and talk again about all of the things that we are doing and the cost estimation and the architect and the public forums, and, because maybe that wasn't clear.
Sure. As I mentioned, we've hired an architect, and we're sort of early on in the process of considering a global resolution for all the school's facilities, taking a fresh look. And, you know, as part of that process, there'll be a point where we're going to get the public's input. You know, there are going to be some choices to be made. Everything isn't black and white. There is some stuff, you know, that's clear that the schools need, and I don't think we'll gather much debate, but there will be some choices. Okay, we feel it's important that the architect in the school board and the facilities committee clearly separate those out and get the public's input. Once we're kind of comfortable where we think people are with this, then you need to hire a cost estimator, and that's sort of the second sort of phase of this, so people know what it's going to cost for this. That's what the 150 is for. And within that, when I say architect fees, the architect may need to consult with a civil engineer or a structural engineer in considering whether to renovate, especially the junior senior high school, or not. So that's what that money is for. It's basically for due diligence.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Watson.
you for the question.
Ms. Weinstein.
Weinstein, Ash Swamp Road, and maybe this will add some clarity to that question. Maybe it will muddy the waters. I don't know. But as a town, I mean, we do this all the time. You know, we're going to raise money for the McAllen Dam. The voters may or may not approve a solution to the McAllen Dam when that comes to ballot. We're going to raise, you know, we raise money for, or we spend money on studies for zoning. We may or may not approve those changes. So I just think that it's very common for us to do this sort of thing, and the fact that we want, or, you know, wastewater treatment plant is another example. So the fact that we want to do this for a school And to me, just makes a whole lot of sense, so that we have plans to move forward with.
Someone might call this the due diligence phase that we're still in.
Exactly.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Spiegel.
I think that since the issue has been a controversial one about school facilities for such a long time, and significant amounts of monies have previously been expended, I think some people have a healthy skepticism about spending money without knowing what it's going to be spent for, per se. However, to go back to my original comment, I think the school board has conducted itself responsibly in conducting a comprehensive analysis of the alternatives, especially because this analysis not only includes the junior, senior high school, but the elementary school as well. And although I'm sure there are some people, if not most people, who would prefer that no money ever be spent, that this is a necessary expenditure in order for the issue to be brought to some resolution, whatever that resolution may be. And so I would encourage people in the community to support this. In effect, to not support this is to basically to leave the community with little or no positive way to address the current school facility issue. And that was, my question originally was, what happens if this doesn't get approved? Does the process just come to a complete grinding halt? And if that's the case, then I think there's every reason for it to be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spiegel. Any further comment, discussion?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes,
Do
Mr.
I need to go
Foster.
to the microphone, or can I stay here?
Can everybody hear Mr. Foster?
The yellow sheet, will that be presented at the polls? Obviously, it's not the official ballot, but will that be at the voting as
Have we normally done that?
language?
We haven't, but we can.
Haven't?
If it is, may I ask a suggestion? Not changing the warrant article itself, underneath the description of Article 8,
That
new
first
construction.
word.
Huh?
That very first word.
Approval of Article 7 establishes a new capital reserve fund. Article 7 does not establish a capital reserve fund. It actually dissolves the dual purpose fund. Article 8 actually creates the fund that you're asking about.
That's great.
If this is going to be at the polls, that may end some confusion between the two articles as well.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
point.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
That was Mr. Foster from Langs Lane. Any further comment on Article number 8? Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Morning. Just a Little Lion, Gannett Drive. Just a quick clarification on Article 8. It's my understanding that this $150,000 has one of the components that makes it great utility is that if we go to vote on an article in 2017, that we'll have a very, very clear understanding of cost. And someone told me at one point that, we would know doorknobs, we would know, down to the brass tacks, if you will. So can someone speak to that and to the level of detail that provides for us?
Mr. Kennison, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can speak to that. My comment about the doorknobs and the windows and all that stuff was in relation to what Al talked about. That if we had expended the actual design document fees, the 7% of the total construction cost, that's what you would get. So that was potentially one advantage of doing that. With a cost estimator, it's just that, it's an estimate. They're usually pretty accurate. They're not as accurate, to be clear, as you would get with finished design drawings. And with any construction project, typically the rule of thumb is if you're building new, there's a 5% contingency because things just come up. Steel workers go on strike, steel costs more, things like that. You run into ledge, you have to do more blasting. With a reno, it's typically 10% of an old, contingency for an old building. So a cost estimator will get you close, but it's not going to be down to the dime. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Yep. In terms of this, do you think that this improves or enhances the transparency of the financial aspect? That process, the purpose of that is to increase transparency?
I don't know if it increases it, Elena. They had cost estimators for both of the last two proposals as well. I mean, you can't do it without it. I mean, an architect can get you within millions, but a cost estimator gets you sort of within hundreds of thousands of the projected cost. What I would say that will contribute to transparency is what we're doing in terms of the analysis leading up to it. In terms of having a broad-based facilities committee. All our meetings are recorded and televised, so you can catch them on Channel 13. But even more so is when we get there, to have the public's input. I mean, that's really something I don't know that's happened enough in the past. It's sort of like, at least the last proposal, I think, I might get the dates wrong, but I think it was towards the end of December that it was rolled out. It's not a lot of time between then and March to sort of get the word out and get people's feedback. So the cost estimator alone won't give us greater transparency, but this process will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further comment, discussion of Article 8.
Dale Pike, 35th Garrison Road. And I just will take this as an opportunity really to complement the process. I haven't agreed with every decision that's been made. I don't think anybody would agree with every decision. There's lots of decisions that get made along the way. But I think it has been such a contentious process over the years that I've been paying attention. And I think we had the last vote that was split almost evenly 50-50. And even those among us that may have voted for the last school would agree that there was a flawed process that got us to that vote. And I think this process that we're in is almost laborious, but I think it is so important that we have greater consensus and not an even split the next time we vote on what we're going to do with our school facilities. So I really want to recognize all the hard work that so many of the people sitting in front of me have put into this effort. And I want to say that I think that this is small money to invest in continuing to give you something to work with to get this job done, because I really think it's really important that at the end of the day, we feel like this isn't what defines Newmarket as a town that can't come to consensus around its school facilities, but a town that has so much to offer and so much going on that's great. So.
Thank you. Here, here.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. Further discussion of Article 8. Seeing none, Article 8 will proceed to the ballot as presented. If I can steal a little bit of your time, Mr. Lunny has asked for permission to make a couple of public service announcements, which he promises to be
very
brief for a change.
For a change. First, I want to thank the nearly 100 people in attendance today. Thank you for participating in the process, and please bring your neighbor as we move forward to all of the other opportunities. Second, I want to announce to everyone in this and other public forum that we have very, very successfully hired our next superintendent. She is Meredith Nato, and Meredith is here with us. Meredith met with the school board on Thursday night in a session where we discussed transition and talked about personnel matters, and is already having a strong influence on the direction that the district is taking. She will join us formally on July 1st, but we certainly appreciate her interest and commitment to us in the months that stand between now and July 1st. And I want to thank everyone that was involved in a very, very successful search process, including especially Al Zink for joining us on the board and leading that effort. And then I want to make one more comment and thank, on behalf of the school board, the town of Newmarket, its staff that have been involved in so many things and more to come, but certainly in the cleanup of the property that we call across from the junior senior high school, the Carpenter property. That was, I think, a grand example of the cooperative efforts that we can realize between the school district and the town. I want to thank Rick Mulaski, both as chief, for burning that building down and doing so very successfully and carefully, and also for turning what had become a security risk, a danger to our community, especially our kids, and an eyesore, into what is a beautiful, flat, clean, safe, and easily monitored space. And so really my hat is off to him and his staff for the work that they did, and I appreciated hearing again today the possibility that his crew might help us moving forward. I want to also just say out loud, there have been no actions and no deals made. Walmart is not building on that site. We at this point do not have an agreement with a tractor dealership, and I haven't heard of any semi-pro baseball, football, or other team that will be putting a stadium in on that property. I just wanted to make sure we set that clear. Thank you.
If there's no further business to come before the meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Kefauver seconds that motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. See you at the polls on February 9th.